Good afternoon, LinkedIn. I hope you can hear me and see me. Today, I am very fortunate because I know she is incredibly busy to be joined by Louise Archer from Retrained Search. She's going to talk a little bit about her business in a moment, but obviously, as everyone knows, retained search, as I was saying to Louise before we came live on air, has really become, for me anyway, a word that we all knew about. We all knew what search and retainers were pre-COVID, but they've definitely become much more prevalent as a consequence of COVID. So if you do miss the live show that we're doing now, you can always watch the recording on my LinkedIn page or on our YouTube channel, Rowella James, afterwards, if you haven't had the opportunity to watch this fully today. But we're hoping it's going to be a bit interactive. We hope to have some questions in the chat. So as I said at the beginning, we've called this Why Retained Search. Louise, do you want to tell us a little bit about your business, what you do, and how you got to this place where you're now selling these incredible courses all over the world? I hope, can you still hear me? Yeah. Oh, my mic is still going. Sorry. Off for a second there. Tell us a bit about what you do and why you do it.
Sure. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I know you're really busy too, and there's loads of people that you can invite. So thank you very much for having me. So I'm Louise Archer, and I'm the founder of Retrained Search, and we teach contingent recruiters and those with retained experience how to sell or improve their sales and delivery of retained search assignments. How I've ended up doing this completely by accident. It was not by design at all. I'm a recruiter. I have been for 20 years, best part of, and I was a contingent recruiter up until about 7 years ago. And I didn't know what retained search was back then. I had no idea. And it wasn't until I happened to be working alongside somebody that was working on a retained basis, and I learned from him how to do it. And I've just never looked back. I can't imagine ever working on a contingent basis again. And since then, I've worked for a professional research firm and an executive search firm, and learnt best practice tools and techniques in sales and delivery that have enabled me to carry out some wonderful projects all over the world, from research to talent mapping, talent pipelining, and search assignments. And I've fallen into teaching other people just through people asking me to teach them. And that's kind of grown arms and legs and is now pretty much all that I do. And we now run, as you know, Rue, an online course combined with coaching that teaches everything from beginning to end, from mindset through sales and delivery of retained.
And I haven't completed it yet, but we are going through that journey with you. And I know you've had some, fantastic success. Yeah. Why do you think retainers why do you think it is now the way to go? That there are so many contingent recruiters out there. It was always a little bit of a dark science, I think, in the past. So why now? Why has it become so popular as a way of finding candidates for clients?
Well, what I think's happened, and obviously I don't know, but what I feel has happened is because of LinkedIn and because of job boards and because it's become much easier for hiring organizations to go direct to talent, the easier to fill positions they are wherever they can doing themselves. And so more and more we're being brought in as recruiters to help them on the more challenging assignments. And they're more challenging, and it's where there are niche skills or very highly in demand, and it's very competitive skill set, or they're in a challenging location, and there's for all those different reasons, or they're maxed out with capacity on the other things, and they bring us in to a busy and competitive talent market. And it isn't as straightforward as just finding some CVs and hoping that we manage to place somebody. And it takes more time and more effort to actually reach a result, which of course is very difficult to do when you're working on a contingent no win no fee basis, because of the risk that is involved with applying that much time and energy and resources to trying to fill the position. So almost the only way to be able to resource and effectively work on those assignments is with some financial commitment, with that guarantee that
Yeah.
we are able to put the time and resource in, because we know we're going to be rewarded with a fee at the end
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's more prevalent now. I mean, there's a whole host of other reasons. I think the more widely it's talked about, the more interested people are in it, and the more achievable it feels, and the more people do it, and therefore the more people see other people doing it and thinking, oh, maybe I could do that too. And so it's a bit of a self-fulfilling cycle, for me. But it is much more prevalent now, certainly, than when I transitioned to Retained. And
Yeah.
it a sort of stripped back version of an executive search process is working so well now for niche and critical assignments that aren't particularly senior.
Yeah.
And it's brought it down the layers into the realm that I was operating in, and a lot of us are those mid to senior levels that aren't particularly executive. So it becomes much more achievable for us, and once you start, and once people start to work on a retained basis, it tends to breed more assignments because it produces the results that everybody's looking for.
Yeah. And if you are running a contingent firm and would like to take this step, one of the things I was, again, discussing with you is that sometimes it's really hard to sell a retainer to a client when they think you're already doing a really great job on a contingency basis. So under what circumstances should you take one on, and under what circumstances should you not offer that to your client?
So for me, retained search is a solution. It's a solution to a circumstance, a problem. I mean, in many ways, I agree with, was it Amelia Sordell, I think, said that all professional services are solutions. And I completely agree with her that clients buy to solve their problems. So essentially, if there isn't a problem there, then they're not likely to buy the solution from you. So if they're getting what they want from a contingent process and it is working for them, not only is it difficult for you to position a retained solution effectively, but they're probably not going to need it. It's not necessary. And so it's probably not worth positioning in those circumstances. So that's one of the instances that I'd sell. Probably don't try and make it into a sell when it really isn't necessary. Because it's just going to be painful for you and painful for the client when they're saying, but actually we're getting everything that we need already. Why should we do that? Which is why so much of the sales process is it's important to focus on the problem, and whether they are getting what they want from the current processes, to make sure it is the right thing to suggest even in the first place. And what the other instances that I say it's not advisable, in my experience, to recommend a retained solution is when it's impossible to fill. It's exactly the opposite of that. It's a position that you look at and think, no way, not a hope in hell. There's just no way that we can deliver against that. It might be because it's something that you don't know, or that you've never done before, or that what they want just is completely wildly different from what exists. My slight caveat to that is, I think every position is fillable if the desire from the client is there and the willingness to flex parameters to ultimately find a solution is there. Then what you end up with might not be the same shape and size as what you set out to find, but what you do have is all of the evidence along the way that you will be sharing with your client to make sure that they're making decisions based on fact and are able to make the decision of the next best thing. But the third instance is if the client's difficult to deal with and unpleasant to deal with, because that whole process is horrible if the client is unpleasant, and it's not a partnership that I would recommend, a way of working I'd recommend if they're not willing to partner with you. So in those cases, though, I mean, just touching on what you said there, Rue, about an existing client that is getting what they want, from you, and it's all working hunky-dory, then the driver from them isn't there because they don't have a problem. Everything's good, but the problem then becomes yours. It becomes yours, and it's you actually that has the problem, because the way that you're working is not necessarily sustainable. And the way that I help people to see that is by thinking back to the positions and the times that you've worked with them, perhaps where you've put a lot of time and effort in something and it hasn't resulted in a fee.
Mm.
And the risk that you're taking every time you embark on an assignment
Yeah.
with them where they have no financial commitment to you,
Mm.
because at any point they could just say, I'm really sorry, Rue. Thank you so much for your hard work. We really appreciate it. It's really good of you. But what we've decided to do is this, and I really appreciate it. And don't worry, we'll always come to you. But that's the situation you're putting yourself in every time that you work on their behalf on a no-win, no-fee
Yeah.
basis. You're very,
Mm.
very vulnerable.
Mm.
And if we're small business owners or even big business owners, being able to allocate resource on a no-win, no-fee basis now in the market that we're working in, where you do need to apply a lot of time and effort and energy and resources
Yeah.
to get the result, becomes just too risky. And that's how to frankly, honestly, and openly explain to a client that you've been doing a great job for, that actually you want to continue to do that great job,
Mm.
but without some financial commitment, it starts to get more and more risky as the market gets harder and harder to navigate.
Yeah.
And you don't need to change the payment model, the payment amount. It doesn't need
Yeah.
to be an exercise to make more money. It can just be, it's as simple as the payment structure that changes in order for you to have the confidence to apply that time, knowing that you will ultimately secure the full fee. And hopefully that helps people to see how you
Yeah.
can transition a client that you're providing a great service to already.
I think that's a really good point you made. It's not necessarily it would need to get a bigger fee. It's that commitment up front that
Yeah.
means at the end of it, for the effort you put in, there'll be something at the end of it, which I think is a really great thing you've said there. In terms of the criteria that you would set against whether you should take a role on, as you said, there's lots of roles out there. You obviously everything's fillable to a level, but what's the criteria what criteria would you be thinking about before you go in and start selling this solution to a client when you're looking at the role itself?
Well, I think because of the nature of the solution and the breadth of industry that we certainly coach in, and recruitment exists in, which is everything in every walk of life, really. There isn't a fixed sort of criteria as such. I think it's mainly centered on those understanding whether it's necessary in the first place.
Yeah.
It has what they've done before worked. Have they gone about hiring for this position before, and has it worked for them the way that they went about it last time? And if they did, it's highly likely they're probably going to follow the same sort of process or use the same methodology. Firstly, I would say if we're new to them, why are they talking to us about it? If it worked so well with whoever they used last time, so why aren't they using them again?
Yes.
But really get under the skin of whether, if they haven't hired something like this before, what do they know about the talent pool, and how well prepared are they for attracting and securing talent in this talent pool? Do they know the talent exists in the first place? Do they know where they are? Do they know how they're rewarded? What drives them? What motivates them? Who the employers of choice are in that market, for example? Why? What we need to do and need to look like and need to sound like to attract them? What they want, from their career progressions, and what motivates them? Do we know all those things? And if we do, it should be fairly straightforward. But if we don't, and if they haven't hired in this market before, it's likely that they don't, then we could have a really frustrating time trying to go down a CV route, a contingent, no win, no fee, send me some CVs type route, which could be frustrating for everybody, and also potentially have quite a damaging effect on the marketplace by the position being out in the market and maybe the message not being managed carefully. So those are the things that are important to think about. And then what's the driver behind the position? How critical is it? How important is it? How urgent is it? Does it matter if it's just somebody, or does it need to be the right person? Because if they just want anybody, again, probably a CV exercise of sending CVs is probably sufficient. If what they're looking for is somebody that fits with the technical competencies and the behavioural criteria, and is going to fit with the business and be the right person when you're working on a no-win, no-fee basis, sending CVs, you don't know whether you have the best of the talent available to you, and that's to coin Henry Myers, one of the guys that's done our course recently, I don't know whether you've heard us saying this, Rue, but he said the difference between contingent and retained is thinking that you've made the right hire and knowing that you've made the right hire. And I love that, because that's a nice one to share with a client that's not sure which route they might want to go down.
Obviously, you have had a lot of success stories, because I do sit in on some of those sessions that you run to follow up with the course, which is absolutely fantastic. What's been the greatest story, the best story you've heard so far?
Oh my God!
What was the one that you felt most proud of when you heard that they'd achieved either got the retainer, or Dante's asked a question which we'll ask you in a minute, but
I don't know. I mean, it's so difficult, that, because we literally get emails every day, and text messages every day saying, "Oh my God, this has just happened," and it would be remiss of me. I think one of the guys that's done our course recently was no experience in retained, ever, operating in mid-level, sort of up to 60K, not particularly senior. Never ever worked on a retained basis in his life, and he now is 6 months post course. So he did the course 6 months ago. He's now 100% retained. His fees have gone from 12.5% to 24% average.
Wow.
He billed zero for a couple of months in lockdown before he started the course. He's now at 40K a month consistently, all retained, 100% retained.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a great an example of a really achievable, market level that anybody in that space I think it's easy to think, oh, I can't do that, it's too complicated and it's too senior, or I'm only a small business, or it's only me. And actually, it couldn't be further from the truth. And then recently, one of the guys who's just started, he emailed me to say he bought the course on Monday. He binge watched, in his words, module 1 on Monday. Binge watched module 2 on Tuesday. Won his first retainer on Wednesday, and now on Thursday he emailed me to say, I'm watching module 3 now to make sure that I deliver it properly. And he's now actually, I've just seen in their WhatsApp group that he's now on retainer number 2. So
brilliant.
We get them all the time. Really proud of everyone for just following, doing the work and making it happen.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think it's a David song that we could write around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think he has a song. We could turn that into some sort of retained song. But wonderful to show that in the space of a week, he achieved so much.
Yeah. I mean, experienced consultant. These aren't rookies. Yeah.
Once you've won the retainer, obviously, then you've got to fulfill. What are those important next steps once you've won that? Because I think that's where people do come on start. Certainly in our market, we have a lot of clients say to us, I've given a retainer to an R2R, it hasn't worked out. We can win them, but how do we fulfill on those? What do we do next?
It's such a good question, because we see the same problem, and that is the selling. It is not the hard bit, really. Once you know how, once you learn and your mindset is right, and you understand exactly what it is that you're doing here, it becomes less of a sell and much more of an education and an offering, which is much more straightforward. And then it becomes easy. And once you've sold and, as I say, or suggested and recommended one and secured it and delivered it, you can do it again and again and again, and that becomes the easy bit. And the hard bit, as you say, the hard bit is delivering. And that's the difference between those that come to us that have said, I've won the odd one in the past, and I've done a little bit of it, but I've never really been able to transition fully. And this is why. That's the difference. It's knowing how to deliver and having a consistent, repeatable but really robust delivery process that changes what you're doing from selling the odd retainer into a way of working that works, and that works for you, that works for the clients, and delivers the results for both of you. Because that's then when it becomes a joy, and that's when you start to work in a way that you don't want to work in any other way, because this is the way I know I can deliver results. So the delivery, as you say, is everything. It really is everything, and that's what completes the cycle of then going on to sell more and more. And I've talked about it a lot recently, but you talk to search consultants, experienced search consultants, and ask them about their BD processes, and they look at you like, I don't know,
Just happens.
I just deliver, and that's what it
Mm.
is. That's all I do. As long as you
Mm.
deliver, you get more and you win
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And so how do you make sure that you deliver? And that was your question. And the answer is process. It's process, 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 process. Like, you need a framework for delivering projects that is robust, is watertight, is bulletproof. One of the guys that just did the course, he used
Yeah.
that word, and I love that word. That you can set a project up for success, that you can start with a briefing, with a kickoff meeting that's going to cover absolutely everything that you need to do
Yeah.
right at the front end of a project,
Yeah.
to make sure, and that's where the work goes in. It all happens at the front end, to make sure that you set the search up properly, you agree the parameters, you agree the competencies, agree the target geography, agree the target companies, agree the off limits, agree the benchmark profiles, everything that could happen along the way. What happens if someone specs a CV, and what happens if an internal candidate crops up, and having a framework for that briefing session is one of the most critical things for the project. And then, of course, it's actually being able to execute a research, identification of candidates, outreach to candidates, the assessment of candidates, and the managing of that information, data, and process in partnership with the client, feeding in all of the data and the research that you collect from the market, and being transparent with your client every step of the way. That means that you then work together and they see the search through your eyes as you're conducting it.
I like
that makes sure that you're both completely aligned every single step of the way. And I don't have time to talk through the whole process, but the answer is process, is really robust process. And if you're a decent recruiter, you can build it yourself. I'm not here to force everybody the only way is to do our course, because it isn't. It really isn't. With time and effort and energy and continuous improvement, you can set up a process that mitigates against all the risks. Every time you go down a process and something goes wrong, you think, right, what could I have done at the front end to stop that from going
From
wrong?
happening. Yeah.
So next time you do a search, you make damn sure that doesn't go wrong again. And every time you do that, after 10, 20 searches, you'll have a bulletproof process that will not let you down. And sometimes they're tough, sometimes, and this is taking the rough with the smooth on search. Sometimes you take on an assignment and it's really difficult. I've done one myself, took me 12 months recently, just last year. For whatever reason, it was really, really difficult search. And the important thing is don't walk away. What we find is more and more in this market, people are selling retainers and not delivering them. So when you meet a client and recommend a retained solution, their objection is, well, I've done that before and it didn't work. I've paid a retainer before, and which is it's just awful. It's awful. I can't, it's horrible being with a client that says that, because somebody's taken the time and the energy and the effort to explain to this client the best way of working is in partnership on a retained basis. And then they've walked away from it. So if you take a retainer, don't walk away. Work with them to find a solution. It might be that it's a different shape and size to what you set out to achieve. It might be that it's a completely creatively different solution, like bringing in an interim to coach somebody internally, but work with them until you reach a result. Don't walk away. Don't take a retainer from a client and walk away.
I think you made a really good point there. If they see the search through your eyes, they see what you're going through, the ups and downs of the search, then they'll be more understanding. As a consequence, they might change that brief or be more flexible. And I love that. We have got some questions here, so I just want to make sure that the audience that are here. So Dante has said, question to Louise. Louise mentioned that she would not ideally work on a contingent basis again. I heavily do retained searches and have done for the past 3 to 4 years. However, that I have found common when approaching new clients on a retained basis is that they would like us to demonstrate what we can do, achieve on a contingent basis first, before offering a retained solution. How would you overcome that?
Yeah, sure. And it is
overcome
really
this to ensure you do not go down the retained route. I think what he's saying is clients basically have said to him, show us what you can do first, contingency-wise, before you go down that route.
Unfortunately, it isn't possible to put the same amount of time and effort and energy into an assignment on a no-win, no-fee basis. It's just too risky. It's simple. It's too risky. If you did, then you're potentially not going to have a viable business. If you do that, you're going to be putting huge amounts of time and effort. And if you don't put the time and effort in, then you're not actually demonstrating what you're capable of. So you run the risk of looking like you're less capable than you actually are. So I would say that asking someone to demonstrate capability on a no-win, no-fee basis isn't conducive to understanding whether what we can do is suitable for them or not. I would say what is conducive and is possible is for us to work on a reimbursable basis in the first instance for the first couple of weeks. And if you don't like what we're doing and you don't want to continue with the search, after 2 weeks, we'll stop the search and we'll reimburse the retainer. That allows us, because I have confidence in the service that I deliver, and I know that they're not going to be uncomfortable with what I'm doing, and they're going to want me to continue after 2 weeks, and I'm willing to work on that basis. And I'll stop, at the end of those 2 weeks, we'll have a pause and we'll say, look, this is where we're up to, this is what we've done so far, these are the candidates we've identified, this is what the next step is. Would you like me to stop and reimburse the retainer, or do you want me to carry on? And that is a way of you having the security from the client to be able to invest your time and resources to actually demonstrate what a retained search process looks like for you, and enable you to carry out the search properly and demonstrate in the way that you want to be, in the way you want to partner with them. So that's what I would say, Dante, rather than offering to work contingently.
I like the reimbursable method. And then we've got Annette. Hello, Annette. I'm hoping I can get her question on the screen. Yeah. Can you make me feel better, Louise, and confirm again to me? So Annette is the managing director of G2 Legal, I think. I hope I got the company name right. Can you make me feel better, Louise? And can you make her feel better and confirm that retained in the legal sector is pretty tough?
It is tough. Yeah, it is tough. It is tough. What we find is that, yes, they're really happy to sign up to contingent terms. They'll sign contingent terms all day long to stop you from poaching. Retaining this is pretty tough. I know you've had experience this previously. It is tough because they want to keep their options open. Where it's easier and where I would focus your attention is with those clients that have an actual need. So a lot of businesses in the legal sector will just be always open to spec CVs. It's very candidate driven. It's very spec CV driven, which is great. If you've got a grade A candidate, get them out there, and they'll always make room for a good fee earner. But occasionally law firms have a need, and they have a specific need for somebody in a certain location, or somebody's moved up, or for whatever reason they've actually got a position to fill. And for them, in those instances, it's incredibly difficult for them to find the right person at the right time, when all they've been doing is just hoping that something comes along. It inevitably doesn't. And so the only way to find that person within the timeframes that they need it is by working in partnership on a retained basis and choosing someone to carry out that search for them. So those are the instances in which I would position retained. I would say you're candidate driven for the majority of the time, and stick with the candidates where you know you can place, and don't work on contingent assignments. Don't work on behalf of the client on a contingent basis when it's just too risky. Everyone's throwing spec CVs all the time. Stick with a candidate, or if you actually need somebody and you have a position you need to fill, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else that you choose, the best way to find that candidate and secure them is by working in partnership and having somebody investing the time and energy and process to working with them until they reach that result. Hopefully that helps Annette feel a bit
Mark
better.
has just made a comment here saying, thank you. And then Mark, just because I know you've got a coaching call shortly, so we don't want to keep you late.
Yeah.
Mark has said here, I think what he's saying is that he agrees with everything you're saying, but he's saying contingency recruiters should never go near retained, as they will have to do a massive top-down change in their business.
I'm not
I think
sure
it is a
what
significant change to your business. I think it is a significant change to your business if you've always worked contingency. It's a big change, but it's doable.
A standard contingent. I guess I think what he's saying is a contingent recruiter shouldn't sell a retainer if they don't know what it is and they don't know how to deliver it. And I completely agree. Agree, which is why we don't teach how to sell it without teaching how to deliver it, because it's disastrous, and you end up with that circumstance where the client has paid a retainer and not had delivery, which is just horrendous for everybody all round.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. A contingent recruiter that hasn't been trained in search delivery should not be selling retainers.
Yeah, he's actually added, he said, my comments there on screen will be out of context now, but it was more for the process of what one needs to do for retained work to work and define why it works.
Yeah,
which is
agree,
fair enough.
Mark.
Yeah. And Annette said a big thank you.
No
so Louise, so just to finish off, your sort of top 3 tips before going down this route. What should we be thinking about?
So one of the main things that I want to impress on people, and that is, see it as a solution, not as a sell. If the client's not having a problem, don't sell it to them. But you tend to find, if you start looking for problems, you tend to find them. And often working in partnership on a retained basis is a fabulous solution, on the basis that you've got a robust delivery process. That's my second tip. If you haven't got a robust delivery process, put one in place, or don't sell retained search. And finally, don't walk away. Never walk away from a client that you've taken a retainer from. Work with them to find a solution, whatever that might be, whether it's to pause for a few months and let the market refresh, whether it's to look at an interim option, whether it's to look at splitting the role into 2 pieces and look for slightly different skill sets. Whatever that solution be, stick with them until you've done everything that you can to help them find that solution.
Oh, that's 3 really great tips there. Thank you so much, Louise, for your time.
Pleasure.
You've brought up some really great points today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you back another time.
I'd love
and good
to.
luck with the
Thank
move.
you for having me. Thank you.
Move.
Thanks very much.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.